thank you so very much, and welcome to another episode of Talking Cloud. My name's Grant Asplund. I'm your host, and man, I am so excited to be back with you today. You know, I always tell you guys that I'm the luckiest one on the planet because I get to talk to some of the most amazing, brilliant people in the industry, but I'm just a Gilligan. But I got a great professor today, man. I was just reading through his bio, and it's like unbelievable. The guy, long in the tooth in this technical space and consulting. And I think an interesting thing that we're seeing more and more of today in the industry with the growth of SASE, and you know, that's a not everybody can untie. And so the level of consultative services that are, I think, being required today more and more are increasing. And this guy's obviously got a lot of background there. But let me just run through this. I can't take it too much time because holy moly, it'd be the whole program. But suffice to say, 97, 98, he's back in the engineering space, enterprise architect, moved through, was a president. It looks like Advanced Beyond Computers for 4 years. I'd like to ask him about what that is. Then he was at EMC, and this was early, 04, 07, was at Keen that ended up getting picked up by NTT, continues on Chief Technology Officer at L3 Stratus. And I do remember L3 Communications real well. He was there for a few years. He went on, U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. That one's full of compliance and GRC, I'll bet. He was Chief Technology Officer there for nearly 3 years. Went off and then Adjunct Assistant Professor for Cybersecurity, University of Maryland, Adjunct Faculty at ECPI University and Newport News, Virginia, then on to Global Vice President, Chief Information Security Officer, and M&A Consolidation, Integration, SaaS Security Compliance to be complete. And this is at Perfect Commerce. He was there for nearly 3 years. On to President and Chief Information Security Officer at Padlon, if I'm saying that correctly, now better than 5 years. Then market entry business model consultant, which I thought is an interesting little wedge in there I want to hear about because it's in Sao Paulo. Sure. Maybe that might have had something to do with it. On to Truist, where 5.5 years he's moved up from Group Vice President, Head of Cloud Security Advisory, GVP, Head of Cloud Security Management, SVP, Head of Cloud Operations, currently SVP, Cloud Security Cyber Defense. But wait, there's more. Venture Advisor for Glilot Capital Partners in the wonderful town of Tel Aviv. I know well, that's where my company's headquarters is. And then also currently managing partner and co-founder of Eilat Partners. I remember when I first saw that, I thought, I wonder, hey, is he in Eilat? But no, he's in Virginia. And with that long preamble, I'm so excited to have a conversation with John Sargent. John, thank you so much, man, for being here.
No, thank you. That was a great introduction. Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, I kind of read backgrounds of different people, and this is, I mean, it's quite impressive. I'm interested in kind of pulling on a couple of the threads that I saw there, but really, sure. I just kind of skipped over it. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how it rolled, and really we'll discuss however you want to go, or sure. Maybe those guitars behind you, whatever works.
Yeah, the guitars is a short story. It's cybersecurity, and this job can be very technical and intense, and that's one of my releases from that is to sit and strum the guitar a little bit and stop thinking about other stuff. And
nice, cathartic for you. Yeah.
Exactly. You mentioned Sao Paulo, and that was an interesting little side project. While I was working on my MBA, we had to do a project with a company, and I've been in aviation for a long time. I got my pilot's license back, I think, in '96, and so I had the opportunity to work with one of the Embraer's subsidiaries that's building the electric vehicles. So part of my that project was to go down to Sao Paulo to look at how they were bringing that to market and give them some advice on how pilots might take that, how consumers might look at it. So it was very interesting, very different than my normal work.
Yeah.
But
what a great experience,
I'm
though.
passionate about. Yeah, it was fantastic, and I can't say enough about the great people in Brazil.
Well, yeah, isn't it? What is it? Is it caipirinhas? I'm trying to remember.
Oh,
they're special drinks. I'll get somebody who will correct me, I'm sure. But yeah, I love Brazil, Sao Paulo, great city, very interesting. And I think it is kind of fascinating. I just saw a little blurb on the unbelievable progress that's been made in electric, smaller aviation. But this guy's predicting full on, 737 sized planes will be flying electric because the advancements are just really rapidly moving along in the battery area, especially, right?
Yeah, battery and motor efficiency. I mean, obviously not my area, but that's it's amazing that what can be done with batteries now that wouldn't have been even a thought 10 years ago. I mean,
well, this one was also like the vertical takeoff, rotating props, and I mean it's remarkable. But that is interesting how that. And I knew there had to be a story, and I was looking. I know you had got your MBA here just a few years ago, and I thought, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. But really, you've spent a lot of time. I mean, you've been in the cloud a long time, relatively speaking, right? I mean, since we started using that term, I mean, you could say you did programming on the 3090, and that was the cloud.
Sure. Yeah, and I certainly remember the 3090 days, but I was teaching kind of an introduction to what cloud to cloud computing at University of Maryland sometime back, and that was one of the classes that I talked about, a class about how to estimate cost and to do ROI on cloud, because it was such a new platform and a very different model for technology. Everyone was used to large capital expenditure and then depreciation over a period and 5-year cycles.
Right,
and
so it's free. It's free,
right.
So it's going to save me thousands.
Yeah. Until someone, wait a minute, now my operational budget is 5 times what it was.
Right.
And I have no capital expenditure to depreciate. So, that was a big discussion for a lot of folks.
Not even
how do you deal with it?
Yeah, not even mentioning the security vulnerabilities that weren't properly cleaned up, weren't properly deleted because we were so overzealous on spinning up that app, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the first things that I was working on in the governance side for cloud was how do you maintain a strong governance model for something that now the developers have so much freedom, and necessarily they have that much freedom because you need them to be effective. You need them to be agile and pushing the boundaries, but at the same time, particularly in the bank, and in any other kind of highly regulated industry, you need to be able to show appropriate governance, coupled with that agile development, and that's a challenge. There's certainly tools to do it and help you do it, but it requires a shift from the top. People have to understand the projects are going to be budgeted differently. You need to be able to iterate and fail and drop a project and not have committed a huge budget to it, let it go, and then be prepared to reallocate that budget to something that works. And that's a challenge for accounting departments. It's a challenge for technology departments. It's a challenge for security to keep up with that rate of change. It's a very different thing.
John, I'm always an analogy guy, and it oversimplifies for sure. But my analogy is, the old world, it was a lake. Now it's a river. Maybe there was a little shift because there was some wind. Maybe there was a little bit of drift, but it was a lake. The fluctuation was how high it was on in the winter and how much it went down in the summer. A river's always moving, has those same seasonal influences as well, but constantly changing. And I think that really kind of epitomizes the challenge you have to go through when you step from this box that you've known so well to one that is always under churn, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because I can see having been in technology for so long, you certainly see the cycle of consolidation, distribution, consolidation, distribution, but the rate of change is so much faster.
Yep.
It used to be a software company might release a new version, an update once a quarter, and maybe there was a patch once a month. Amazon's making changes to hundreds of services every week. It just requires automation. It requires to be connected to so many more components and be able to assimilate all that information, figure out what's really changed from your perspective, and be ready to make appropriate adjustments. It requires so much more, automation. But conveniently, the automation and the tools that are available to us are moving at the same rate. But being able to adopt the new tool and understand how it's going to impact your environment, that's still a challenge. I'm sure it will continue to be a challenge.
And to trust the automation. I mean, that's one of the things I always find really remarkable is there are a lot of really cool automated tools, right? I mean, we even, Checkpoint has something called Cloud Bots, which is an open source project, right? Where you can create these bots that'll virtually do anything. So if in your product you do a search and it discovers buckets unencrypted, just as a stupid example, you could have a bot that absolutely automatically will encrypt it. Now, a lot of people won't do that because it doesn't have context, right? And that's the problem. But I always find it interesting how much people talk about automating, but how few people automate completely, right?
No.
It's right up to, and maybe that's okay if they can do it efficiently, right? Up to the edge where the decision point is.
Right. And you're right that often the application, the automation does lack business context. And certainly that's the value of the individuals that are there that do understand that. If you can leverage the automation in a way to filter all of the just cascade of information to give you the important points, and you do need to trust the automation and you need to test the automation. There are a lot of folks who do trust and then don't test. And then when you realize it wasn't doing what you wanted to do, well, now it's too late.
Or you're getting phone calls because something's broken.
Or phone calls from a reporter, right? That's what we all don't want to
hear. That's the worst one. So let's talk a little bit about, I'm looking through, in the last 5 years, which, since 2018, it's all been heading cloud security one way or another, or operations. Sure. So in that time, I recall in 2018, there was the rumblings of Gartner's now infamous 99% of all failures will be the customer's fault due to misconfiguration. That 90 plus 8% will be using 3. Now they're saying 4, 5 clouds. What do you see there? And are you expecting repatriation at all based on some of the things we talked about earlier about really doing cost analysis? Where do you sit on all that?
I think from for a smaller company, right, you're a startup, early stage, certainly there's huge benefit to cloud platform, right? Your investment can be very easily tied to customer, tied to adoption. It can be very easy to plan what the cost of your product is or your service is because it's a per unit cost, right? It's real easy to do. But you get to an enterprise, if you don't plan your move to the cloud well, it's definitely not going to save you money. And in many cases, it's going to cost you more money because the things that you took for granted before on a capital investment of, hey, I'll just leave the server running, even though it's not doing anything. I might use it in the future, but whatever. It's a little bit of electricity, and it's already sunk cost, right? I don't have to worry about it. But now, if you're not using it and you don't shut it off, well, you're paying for that server plus, Amazon's profit on the server and or whatever, or Google's.
You're certainly not just paying for the electricity to keep it on.
Yeah, exactly. And so the responsibility of cost management is in a different place than it was before. Right? I mean, cost management was a accounting function, right? You'd get a budget, you'd submit a proposal, you'd get the approval, you'd go buy the stuff. Right now, that the person in the engineer in the department who builds a server can turn it on or turn it off. Can potentially pick the wrong model server that costs 10 times what it should have cost. Yeah. And it's very difficult to retroactively go back and find that and fix it and make an appropriate change. So you have to move the responsibility, move the deal with costs much faster. Ensure you have almost daily visibility and alerting on what the costs are for all of these components that before you didn't. It just didn't matter. Right? You bought it. You're going to depreciate it over 5 years. Little fluctuations here and there weren't going to cause anything.
All the things you're talking about, quite frankly, John, are why I really believe a CSPM is going to be just so. Everybody's going to have some sort of posture management in the cloud, right? Because it's so fundamental and critical. That's not to say all are going to have a full-on platform from, code to cloud and deployment, but that function of giving posture, it just seems like everybody has it now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think you should. I don't think even a small organization should be in the cloud without some type of CSPM.
Well, and the cloud vendors too themselves, right? They're even offering it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because there's too many capabilities for change without you having to stare at the console all day long. Yep. So you need something to be looking for you and giving you the appropriate alerts and that. And I think you said not everyone's going to have a full blown solution, but I think a lot of the CSPM products have a little bit of cost management in it, a little bit of drift detection, a little and you absolutely need it. I don't think you can operate reasonably without it.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking about multi-cloud. Where do you stand on that? Do you see that actually continuing? And then also, what's your expectation of repatriation? Because I've heard some people speak pretty strongly about that. Others not so much.
Yeah, I think let's first talk about multi-cloud, because there is value in each cloud provider and how it interacts with an application. And so, there's certainly reasons that I would choose to put an application in an Azure environment, say, rather than a GCP environment, rather than an AWS environment, or same thing for all those. But there is enough redundancy if an application is properly architected within each one of those platforms that I don't think having a single application coexist in two cloud providers provides comparable value to the cost, right? There's so much complexity and differences between an application hosted in native in AWS and hosted in native in, say, Azure to build an application that functions in both simultaneously when you can deal with it. You can use availability zones regions and use one platform, leverage the high availability that's there rather than trying to do multi-platform. But each cloud service provider has their own benefits and drawbacks. So,
I'm a heavy
I think
AD
a multi-cloud,
shop, right?
Sure. I think a multi-cloud strategy makes sense.
Yep.
Just not a single application multi-cloud strategy because I think that layers complexity.
Yeah. And also, if you're a big enterprise, if for nothing else, then for leverage, right? To have a little bit more control over where the fulcrum is, because if you're a large enterprise and you're just eating out of one trough, you may not be doing yourself a favor. So what about repatriation, John? What do you think about it? Because there was all this rush to the cloud, and I've heard some organizations, some financial institutions, right, pulling back. Where are you on that?
I mean, there are certainly some systems that cloud is not the right solution for, right? I mean, if you're still running a mainframe emulation is not a thing I would think an organization like that's going to use, right? Mm-hmm. It's not enough of a cost savings. There's a lot of complexity required. You keep your mainframe on your data center, right? I mean, there are certainly systems that you want to have internal, and there are some systems that are potentially big enough and they're stable enough, their consumption's consistent, that you can make good forecasts and go ahead and make a big capital purchase and purchase it for 5 years and let it sit and run. And the per cycle cost of that is substantially lower if it's stable. If you have an application that has a gigantic spike at the end of each month, well, yeah, cloud's a great place for that to sit, right? And if you re-architect it to be event-driven, cloud's a great place for that to sit.
Yep. That elasticity.
Exactly. I mean, those are huge benefits that the cloud provides by being so large and giving you access to resources that you haven't yet paid for, and you just pay for when you need them.
But your point is, I think, so spot on. I've heard this from so many on this program in various episodes, and it's about have a plan. Because let's face it, man, the cloud makes it real easy to ready, fire, aim. And you can get into trouble, right?
Sure, you absolutely. And I think, they're driven by, their own preservation, but cloud service providers are of course going to tell you about all the benefits and not about all the costs. And so, it sounds like, this nirvana of, I can run everything and it's going to be cheaper and faster and more flexible. And well, potentially is what I would say is not yes, but potentially, right. But you have to do the work up front and be prepared to make the investments in re-architecting applications so that you're taking advantage of the things that let you be more flexible and more cost efficient. I think a lot of the message gets to the people that want to hear it cheaper, faster, and don't ask about how much work it's going to be to get from now to there. Right.
It doesn't magically happen. So have you heard the phrase pets versus farm animals in the context of cloud computing? I think it's an interesting notion. And the idea is, when you think about where we were 20 years ago, right? Our servers, we named them, right? We patched them, we kept them, we coddled them. You got to be careful with her. They were our pets, and then eventually they would die. And we put them on a raft and shoot burning arrows to them, right? So, but farm animals, it's a little bit more gruesome, right? Time to eat. And so with the advent of things like Lambda and other function capabilities, to be able to literally spin it up, the idea of no longer worrying about drift. It's essentially a Control-Alt-Delete and just build a new one today, right? So it's like a brand new one every morning or every week or whatever.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. And I don't remember who it was, but I was reading a case study about an organization that all of their servers had something ludicrously short, like a 90-second lifespan. They would spawn the server. It would join a farm. It would run for a minute. Another one would come behind it, and it would, so that they didn't worry about patching, because the image that the systems were spawned from could be patched once, and then the system, everything would be patched in a couple minutes.
Yep.
Because we're constantly respawning. Obviously, the complexity to get that in place is huge, but there's definitely benefit in operational efficiency afterwards. But in that case, you don't care at all about the server and itself.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. That same. I mean,
yeah, no, it's a good idea.
If there's architect, and look, this is where I'm the Gilligan, you're the professor, but for me, I think if I can ensure that my data is held separate from that, right, so that I can maintain and replicate that store of the gold, right? But the engine that's processing it, I get a new one every morning, shiny and new. Sure. To me, seems brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, that was the kind of stuff you talked about working at EMC. VMware had been acquired by EMC at that time, and I was working with a team that was EMC/VMware, and that was right. You've got the data on a SAN. Compute is an abstract. The right connectivity, and it didn't matter what compute resources went up and down or how many there were. The data was safe. The data was replicated in multiple ways, so it was not only safe, but it was available, highly available. And so the capabilities that disconnection between compute and data brought. That was the beginning of what happened with the cloud. You start to commoditize compute, start to commoditize memory. I remember Cisco had their UCS servers came out around early 2000s that were modular, and so your network
switch,
was modular.
When they came out with their virtual switch, it was huge. And it's funny because Cisco was kind of behind the eight ball. See, I was really lucky back in the day. I was employee number 8 at a company called Altor Networks that built the first purpose-built firewall for the VMware environment, right? And because there were new things, right, like vMotion and the ability for and inter-VM communications. There were no tools for visibility for that. It was a new phenomenon. I remember that whole era. It was the birth. Thank you, Stanford, of what we have now as cloud, right? And this elastic compute.
Right. I mean, that was the key to it, right? I mean, that's you can call a VMware environment on premise a cloud. I mean, it has all the same components,
right?
And VMware did, right? The VMware had their VMAX or whatever that was a private cloud, and even had a front end on it, an orchestration front end. So it was very much like what cloud service providers are now.
Yep.
But yeah, that virtualization of components definitely unlocked everything that's cloud now.
It's awesome, and I think when you one of the things that I always love to do, because my Andy Warhol 15 minutes of fame, the first Macintosh computer that Alaska Airlines and Weyerhaeuser and a handful of other companies bought, I sold to them. And we're talking 1986, okay? And this machine had 1 megabyte of RAM, no hard drive, extremely limited but built-in networking.
Mm-hmm.
And so today, I 650 gigabytes.
Oh.
And I really do think it's bandwidth, connectivity, compute, and storage. Those things, as they have continued to just explode, the rules are changing, John. Remember, before we had to write an app and care where it resided and how big the data set was and where it was and how it was going to get those. I mean, all those rules are going away as we get faster and faster and faster delivery and compute and more storage, to where, I mean, I'm really excited, and I'm constantly kind of trying to think of, where's it going to go? How's this going to change? Because the amount of compute, I don't know if they're still referring to it as Moore's Law, but
I think so. I think
it's still going.
Yes. And I don't know what, and to be honest, I can't quite wrap my head around quantum computing and how that is going to change, the transition from binary to quantum. It's so different. I can't quite wrap my head around it. But the ability of that level of processing and iteration capability that's coming is just, and that's where we have to go, though. At some point, you can only do 1 and 0 so fast. Yeah. And so we got to start looking at the next generation of computing.
Yeah. And, I predict that the wonderful AI is going to be instrumental in helping us truly maximize, because that's the one thing I've been thinking a lot about lately, because it's the topic du jour. Everybody wants to talk about it, and it's quite extraordinary. I have to ask. There's a video. I highly encourage you to watch it. It's on YouTube. It's called The AI Dilemma.
Okay.
And it's from the Center for Humane Technology. The 2 co-founders it's an hour and 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes. But I'm telling you, man, it is so good, because what it does is it just explains in lay terms, what's going on, what happened, why it, when everything went to language, transformer, and what the impact that had, because now we get that exponential. Everybody's work is contributing to everybody else's. But there's also some disturbing or concerning parts. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, AI in general and what you're thinking. I mean, I'm not a doomsdayer yet, but there's definitely reason to tap the brakes, I think.
Yeah. There's a function of kind of human morality that's missing, right? It has all the knowledge. It's able to access all the knowledge and all the previous decisions, but the reasoning behind the decisions isn't necessarily contained in the decision itself. And just showing some of the studies that showed how quickly an AI model can become biased to the people who contribute to it, shows that it doesn't have any filters. It's taking everything as the same value. And similarly, I think there were a few lawyers who were recently were using AI to do some case research, which is certainly a great use for it. But the AI didn't know the difference between real cases and things that it created based on inputs. And so then these attorneys ended up referencing precedent from cases that didn't actually happen that the AI had created and it treated all that the same. So there's a missing, and I'm sure we'll work on that. Right, that'll be an improvement to make to guardrail to steer the AI in a way that that helps to provide a more moral framework for how it deals. And I don't mean necessarily a particular ideology. I just mean this is real, this is not real, this is appropriate, this is inappropriate, and this is how you need to guide how you incorporate and deal with information.
Well, you could argue,
but obviously that's open to bias, right?
Right, and I mean, couldn't you argue there is a bias simply because it's impossible to make it unbiased? I mean, because there's a human that's doing it, right?
Sure.
I mean, this is, and there are all kinds of things that we don't even realize, right? We're biased, and we are. So AI, the whole thing, I guess, for me, and I encourage you to take a look at that video if you've not watched it. It really is worth the hour.
Sure.
I'm not the smartest in the room, but anytime in math, for example, when there's an equal sign, and whatever you have after it, you can work your way back through that equation to figure out how you got it. And sure, there's some things that are happening in the world of LLMs that generative AI, we can't necessarily explain why English in, English out, nothing else. Parameters got larger and larger, and then one day answered in Peruvian. And nobody knows why. So that's the stuff that kind of makes me want to give pause.
Sure. Yeah, when you have so much distributed contribution to a lot of these large language models, there's once you introduce it, you lost control. It's doing things based on inputs, and if the rules that you constrained it with weren't specific enough, it may go in a direction you never imagined. And clearly, several of them have.
Yeah.
That's the I guess it's a challenge. And then like machine learning models, there was so much more feedback, right? That's what I expected. That's what I don't expect. Slowly training it to recognize what you expect it to recognize. But the AI models, particularly these, there's not a feedback loop like that. It has to do its own feedback loop and decide.
Yeah, it's almost a closed loop for itself. And
right.
Have you watched any of the interviews of Hinton, who's the grandfather of AI, the guy who came up with the whole neural networks, years ago, and has proven he was the guy at Google that just recently.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Jeffrey Hinton is his name.
Mm-hmm.
You can look up. There was an interview he did on CBS. That's a really good one. That's about 45 minutes. And then there's another shorter one that he did was on 60 minutes. I think it was about 15 minutes. They're really beneficial. And frankly, it's new to a lot of people, right? There's a lot of stuff
absolutely.
that, we think we get it, but there's a lot of info there. And when you combine what you were talking about earlier, quantum computing, with the continuing expansion of Moore's law from storage and bandwidth, connectivity, all of those things, it's going to be pretty extraordinary where we go.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I'm super excited about it, but have you ever seen? There's a website, SEO Writing AI. Yeah, SEOwriting.ai. It's so amazing, man. You can go in and you can say, I want to write a Medium blog about the benefits of daily exercise. I want to have a positive professional voice. I want to speak in second person. I mean, it's really extraordinary for obviously nothing proprietary. There's just, you want to go down some rat holes, John, go to there's an AI for that.com. There's over
AI aggregator, yeah.
There's over 10,000 AI. It's
product, yeah.
It's crazy for tasks, right? 4,000 or 5,000 different tasks. And, I definitely, that's how I think of AI being most beneficial, doing tasks that I don't want to do or can't do.
Yeah. I certainly use AI to, comb, basically combs all news sources and articles and consolidates and filters and gives me information, because there's too many sources of information to consume, and only so many hours in the day. And going out and crawling every news agency and every podcast, and I'm pulling stuff and say, oh, this, based on what you've done before, this looks interesting to you, and provide it back to me. That that's certainly value.
Yeah,
time has great value.
There's another program called Gamma, GAMMA, Gamma.app, for creating presentations. In fact, it's so funny because I do a presentation live where I show this, and I interrupt myself with a phone call from my boss. And I've got it all set up where, oh, you want me to create a presentation? When do you need it? Oh, I can't. No, there's no way. And it's building right behind me on the screen while I'm saying, no way, it's going to be next week. And then and then I put my finger up and go, just one sec. Yeah. Hey, John, make that tea time this weekend. Yeah, I'm free all weekend. And it always gets a good laugh. It's pretty fun. Remember, I don't know, you're younger man than me. It seems like I say that about everybody. But I remember when Aldous PageMaker came out. It was in 1985. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you got to just realize what a profound release this was in the world. Now we just, we scoff, right? It's so ridiculous. But back then, to be able to create what's known as a compound document with graphics and text, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
And when that capability came out, I remember, the forecast was, oh man, everybody's, going to be out of business that does design. Everybody that's in the printing business is going to be out of business. And each time completely wrong, because there's still a skill that's required. You still have to have
Absolutely.
A design sense and a capability, right? But still extraordinary capabilities at our fingertips. And I just look at some of the things as very similar to that, enabling. And I guess where I was going with that is in the same way that everyone could make a menu and a compound document back then. Today, now with AI, everybody can write code.
Right.
Everybody can write HTML.
Right.
That's pretty.
You can write. It is, and
doesn't mean you're understanding it and it's going to run.
That's exactly it. I watched a developer go, say, I'm going to let AI write the code for an application, a game, and he walked through the iteration, and I was struck by the AI would generate the code based on what he asked for, but he had to know what to ask for. He had to know to ask for the UI. He had to know to ask for an event handler based on what the person fed back in. So the AI shortened the path for a developer who already knew how to develop to get from zero to an application. But somebody who's coming in cold wouldn't have even known what to ask for. So, the AI had the capability to do that, but it wouldn't have done it for everybody. You needed to know something to start.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's sort of like AI can write words for you, but if you don't know the alphabet, right? You you don't know what vowels and consonants are. I mean, what do you ask for, right? So I totally understand and agree, but it seems for a student that wants to learn how to code, wants to learn how to, write in Python, the combination of the two, I think that's where I see a real acceleration and benefit. Sort of like if I wanted to replace the headlight on my Range Rover, right? And where did I go? Of course, I went to YouTube, the University of the Globe. Everybody and I found it, my year, somebody doing it. Man, it made it so much simpler, right? And so I think of in the same way, if I'm a developer, or I want to be, watching on YouTube, that's not, but if I could actually run it through some AI and get AI to help, really beneficial, right? It seems to be an accelerant.
Oh, absolutely. Something like a new development language would, if you were an experienced developer in one language and you didn't know another one, you didn't need to, right? AI is going to write the syntax, it's going to write the code. You just need to know what to tell it to do. Yep. And if you already know how to develop an app in one, you know how to do it. And so the focus needs to not be on the detail, right? You're able to develop an application at broad strokes and let the AI handle the detail. Yeah. Obviously that has its own danger, right? You don't know everything that it's doing. But if it speeds the application to be able to test, and you can test it and move forward, you could certainly move forward much more quickly. Which is what everything we've talked about so far is. Everything keeps accelerating. This is just another tool to accelerate change.
Somebody was talking about how, machine learning, deep learning, that's really where we cyber defenders are going to beat AI. LLMs, I think, are going to be a boon for the bad guys. For example, being able to iterate phishing constructs to find out which one performs more effective, and then go and duplicate that. For example, another one I think is, the hunt, retrieve, and then rehunt. For example, I get in and check out Truist in every port I can, every poke and ping and sniff and snort I can, so I can find out every company's products, or as much as I can find out about a company's configuration, the versions, the products they're using, right? And the minute I can do that, we know vulnerabilities are what get exploited, right? So the CVEs that aren't patched, right? So I see this a much more aggressive equation where I'm using AI to hunt you down. I'm going to find out exactly everything about you, and then I'm going to go back and do some homework to find out what combination of tools are the highest probability for me to win, And that's something that we're going to have to be, I think, really on the watch for.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think to combat that capability, we need to be looking at new cyber tools that are leveraging AI in a similar way, right? We need to know what data is being collected, what ports are being scanned in a way that you can't, a volume that a human can't look at it. Right? You need at the same time as something's collecting the data, you need to be analyzing the data collection and see, it looks like someone's targeting this particular approach or this particular system, or whatever, this combination of systems, uses like that type of defense, uses like, fraud detection, right? Pattern matching and building for credit card fraud and for,
look we're going to have to get way, way better at detecting fake, because deep fake voice, deep fake video, AI generated fake is on the rise. Sure. And when we combine it with the aforementioned quantum computing and storage and bandwidth and connectivity and compute, it's only going to get higher fidelity, only going to get better and more effective. I think they say now, if I have 3 seconds of your voice, John, I can make you say anything I want with AI.
Well, now you have an hour of my voice, Grant, so I hope you're not going to do that.
Boy, keep an eye out for those commercials.
But, that's one of the reasons that my partners and I founded Eilat, not to, talk about something.
I'm glad you
pitch my company, but
no, please do.
We want to make sure that that venture funds are getting directed towards cybersecurity startups that are innovating in the ways to protect, our infrastructure, our national defense, our international, just our environment. We're so interconnected and dependent.
What's more important right now in the world where, look at, first of all, digital transformation, that's a journey, not a destination, right? Because when you get there, you're going to just continue to that's a hamster wheel, man. We're going to continue to be transforming, and it's all digital. So I just don't think there's much more important to really scrutinize than your own security infrastructure, and moreover, the vendors you're choosing. Right. Because the vendors you're choosing have to have a perspective that says, I understand my job is to secure, so my stuff's going to be tighter than anybody's. Right. I'm going to have fewer CVEs than anybody, but that's not a widespread belief. It doesn't seem, not that, nobody's perfect, right? If a human built it, there's something wrong, but that just seems like something that should be scrutinized more than it necessarily is on the part of, the customers and who they end up buying, because sometimes sex and violence attracts, all the whizzy cool things on the UI. But anyway.
Yeah. No, listen, and definitely vendor management is important, because a lot of high-profile breaches have started from a third party, because you trust that third party in ways that you might not, trust someone else, and you assume from maybe the first time you contracted with them that their security posture remains in line with yours, but years may have passed before you've really done a deep dive to see if they're necessarily still doing the things that you would do. Yeah. But we can trust them with API connections, or with internal network access, or all kinds of things.
All that stuff's changing big time. The whole supply chain. We learned a lot from SolarWinds, but hey, listen, I've had you for a long time. And I really appreciate, this has been fun bouncing all around, chit-chatting, and I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I appreciate the invitation, Grant. It's always good to get an opportunity to chat.
We'll have you back, I promise. Hang on, let me sign off here. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did and do. I just absolutely love this. We've had a fantastic conversation with a highly seasoned cloud IT cybersecurity executive, one that really knows this stuff, John Sargent. Thanks, John. Really great having you. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks, Grant.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, share, like, tell your friends, listen, and come on back. We'll look forward to having you back on the next episode of Talking Cloud. Thanks so much.